What is happening, Blades, and welcome back to the Blades Ramble, proudly sponsored by Action Coach Sheffield. Thank you to them again for sponsoring this video. If you are a growing business and would like to continue that growth, they are the people to speak to. So after the fantastic feedback we had about Andy the Blade returning to the Ramble, we had to get him on again, didn't we? And due to his verbal agreement with me that he would make a couple more appearances at least, he's made good on his word. Welcome back, Andy the Blade.
Hey, Jim. All right?
Hey, yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Hey, I'm all right.
Yeah,
hey, right. Fancy talk.
Yeah, it's nice.
This is my I can't get no Blades Ramble though. There's no discount, is there, for family?
I get a discount. I'm gonna have to sort something out, to be honest. Anyway,
no, this is me match going where this, by the way.
I know it is. It were my match going where. You remember rightly?
I know. I nicked it.
I know you did.
Well, no, if you remember, I bought it for you and then claimed it back because it was too nice.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened. It were a birthday present for me that you now wear to match it.
This light on top of my head makes it look out like I've got some white hair.
You really are the Colonel.
Well, I'm not bothered.
So this time, Dad, we're going to have a chat about your scouting background because people are interested to know a little bit more. I know you touched on it in our first get-together. So you explained very briefly that you got into the game through your friendship with Chris Kamara, who you'd met in a pub after a game, got talking about the match, and you've been very close mates for the last 30 years, ever since, really. But the more you got together, the more you talked about the game. He was impressed with your analysis and knowledge of the game, offered you to come to a couple of games with him, I think, and valued your opinion. That eventually led to a part-time gig with Bradford City, who he was manager of at the time. And it went from there, didn't it? From what I understand. I don't know whether you want to take over there or pick me up if I was wrong on any part there.
Well, that's more or less right. I met him when he was at United. He went more or less fairly quickly from United to Bradford as a assistant manager to Lenny Lawrence. Lenny Lawrence only lasted maybe half a year, and Chris took over half a season in and asked me to go to games with him, and just talk players, and we just chatted about players and what we thought, and went from there. Really, yeah. I think that's more or less just what you said. He then asked me the season after to become chief scout when he got offered the job full time, and the first season that we were there, the first full season that I was there, was just a brilliant season for Bradford. We got promotion from there. They started off when I started there with him, like mid-table, lower mid-table, and that was in the what's known as the first division now. Obviously, it was the third division then, and we just went on a run and sneaked into the playoffs by beating Hull on the last day of the season. That were an amazing game. Quick funny tale about that was on the last game of the season, Bradford, who I've got quite a lot of away fans if doing well, they were taking loads to away games and Hull were really struggling. In fact, I think they were going down. And the chairman, somebody Fish, they called him, Michael Fish, somebody Fish, decided to earn a bit of money that they would give the Bradford fans the home cop end and move all the Hull fans out of it. You know, can you imagine like going to Liverpool and saying, Man United, we're going to give you Liverpool's cop, like you've all got to move out and go somewhere else. Well, you can imagine what Hull fans thought of that. We realised as soon as we were, because I went on bus actually, because it was towards the end of the season. I didn't have any more reports to do, so I went on the team bus. So as we're coming up into Hull, there's bricks coming at us from bridge and from bridges coming in motorway, and it was chaos. It was delayed. Match were delayed for crowd invasions and all sorts of stuff.
You didn't get mauled by the Tigers?
Mauled by the Tigers, no. We didn't get mauled by the Tigers. No. So we won 3-2 and went on to play Blackpool in the semi-finals, in the playoffs, and then Notts County. Chris Wilder's Notts County, although Chris Wilder didn't play in the final. Chris Wilder's Notts County in the final and got promotion. And as you know, Jim, because you were there at the Wembley playoff final as a young lad. if you remember
certainly
that.
was. We were very much involved with Bradford at that time, weren't we? That, you know, we, like you mentioned previously,
we
all the family were friends together. We used to do a lot of things together as both families, and we were there. It was Sam Allardyce's Blackpool, I believe, weren't it? That you were 2-0 down to in playoff semi-final. Yeah. So you were 2-0 down in first leg and then at home and won 3-0 away at Blackpool. Unbelievable. Yeah. And then Notts County.
Yeah,
I can't remember who scored the first one, but Des Hamilton scored second and got a £2 million move to Newcastle.
Des Hamilton and Mark Stallard scored, yeah. Yeah, 1-2
right.
So yeah, it was great. We had a great time. You were about, how old would you have been? About 8 and 9, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Dan, before we move on from Bradford, people are keen to sort of know about some of the signings that you spotted and that you were involved in around that time.
Yeah, I was there twice, Jim. First time was great because that was the first time I've been properly involved with a professional club and at the sharp end, really. And I was really involved in everything that were going off. In fact, it was just brilliant because, I mean, I hadn't been long stopped playing myself, but I got involved in like playing in practice matches and training and all that. You know, when we went down to Wembley, we stayed in Slough and we trained down there for 3 days. And I was just involved in all practice matches. And a funny story, because obviously it's a Blades ramble, it's not a Bradford City ramble. Layman Dave reminded me of this tale this morning, and he said, "Why didn't you mention that?" I was playing in a practice
he'll hate that, he'll hate.
Yeah, I was playing in just a training game at the end of training one day, and we'd signed Chris Wilder, and he hadn't been there very long, and so he was playing as well, and I was playing quite well, and I got through one at times, and I'm thinking I'm just going to score here. And I'm not joking. Chris Wilder came from nowhere and bloody kicked me so hard up in the air. And I'm thinking, where the chuff did he come from? And I'm thinking, and as I'm lying there, I'm thinking, Andy, that's the difference between a quality, bloody professional player and me. I was like in my 30s now, but he still thinks he can do it.
Just retired from Sunday League.
Me out. And he wiped me out. And he never said sorry or kissed my ass. So that's a Chris Wilder story. That's a Chris Wilder story for you. I don't know, and he never said anything to me about it. But if I were him, I'd have been thinking, I'm not letting this chuffing old upstart bloody score against my team.
Too right. Yeah.
Anyway, he cleared me out good and proper. One of the best things I did at Bradford in the first time. Well, two things really. One was I went to see some of your, I don't know whether you remember, some of your Ramblers will remember. I went to Doncaster to watch a player called Colin Cram, who was a centre forward for Donny, who scored a lot of goals. And I got there, and you know, when you've been scouting, Jim, I got there, he got injured in the first 5 minutes and went off, and I'm thinking, well, what do I do now? Do I sneak off, not bother watching the rest of it? Or do I see what else happens? If
we'd have gone off at half time, you'd have been away.
Yeah. But anyway, so I stayed. I thought, well, might as well stay and watch the match now. And there were a big centre half playing for Donny who had a great game, and they just signed him, I believe, from Torquay. And I was really impressed. And anyway, I went back to Bradford because they'd been playing at home at Bradford, and went back and I was chatting in the office, and he says, "Well, what do you think of Cram?" I says, "Well, I didn't see him. He got injured after 10 minutes. I says, "But there were a big centre half there who were absolutely well worth us going for." Anyway, cut a long story short, we eventually put an offer for him, and he had to go to tribunal. I think we offered something ridiculous, like 100 grand, and they wanted something like $1.5 million. And I think we finished up buying him 300. Do you know what, Jim? You know
Big Darren Moore. Big Darren
Moore, that's the lad. Yeah, and he did a great job for Bradford.
Good player.
Yeah, that were really good. And the other thing that I think Cammy mentions in his book that he sent me up to watch. I got some stick about this, and in his book he sort of like half gives me some stick because we'd realised, in fact, I'd picked it out that we were after somebody to give us a bit of magic up front, a bit of something different. And I said, you know, Chris Waddle's still playing, don't you, up at Falkirk? And he said, well, yeah, his legs will have gone, because he'd played for Marseille and he'd played for Tottenham, and he'd just come back and he was just messing about, really, I think. And he was playing at Falkirk. Yeah. And he says, well, we'll go up and watch him and see what you think. And he didn't do a lot of running, but you could still see he just got absolute class, you know, whatever he does. Yeah. So I come back and I says, I'm sure he can do a job for us down here, you know. So we finished up signing him, and he did really, really well for us, for Bradford. And but he put in his book, yeah, Andy came down and says, oh yeah, I've seen Chris Waddle, and yeah, I think he can play. You know, as though like I was trying to be funny, as though, you know, everybody knows Chris Waddle can international. Yeah. But it wasn't a case of that. It was a case of seeing whether he could still play. So that's my comeback to Kamara's book.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's now out there.
So that was Bradford.
You've had your say. Nice. Well, that Waddle story. Obviously, we're not a massive Waddle fan on this channel, but you have to respect when players are talented. So that Waddle story links into one of our more famous tales, because we went to watch, obviously, Bradford play a lot that season, and we were in Chris's office. And we always used to go up to office and watch when we were kids. So there'd be me and Dave and Chris's lads, and my mum were there, and Chris's wife were there, and we're all in office, and we walk in, chair spins round. Who sat in chair to watch his mate Chris Waddle? Gaza. Unbelievable. Listen, I ain't got many. Listen, you've got loads, I know you have, and you try and hold them back sometimes, but I ain't got many name drops. But Gaza, Gaza on top form as well, he looked fit and healthy at that time, and it was just amazing for a young football fan to walk into a room and you get a bit of a one-to-one with Gaza, and he just done crisp adverts with Gary Lineker where he crushed his fingers in crisps, and our Dave offers him a crisp and he takes one, and Dave crushes his hand in crisps and he pretends to cry. All this sort of thing. It was such a good crack. And it's that sort of things that you never forget, aren't they? So, yeah, some really good stories from Bradford. Really good stories.
You know, just while you were there with that night, he went down to Chris Evans picked him up, I think, from Bradford or something like this. You know, Chris Evans, the DJ, and him and Gaza and Jimmy Five Bellies went down to London that night, and that's when they were pictured at eating them kebabs. Do you remember when he got into a load of trouble? He was on front page at papers eating these kebabs. Yeah, that was the same weekend.
Wow. So there you go. Another story about Ramble there. Nice. Thank you, Dad. You move on from Bradford. You go to Stoke with Chris. What was Stoke like?
Didn't last very long. Didn't last very long there at Stoke. It was one of those. I don't like you saying this, but like a bit of a poisonous atmosphere. There were people behind the scenes who didn't want Chris there, and he wasn't there very long. And what happened was we didn't do very well. He asked me to go down, and we were trying to buy a striker. We finished up buying a lad called Kyle Light. We didn't have a lot of money. We had a fella called Kyle Lightbourne from Coventry, who scored a lot of goals. We got a really good report from Gordon Strachan. Spent all his money on him because we just needed somebody to score goals, and he came in and got glandular fever straight away. Kamara still blames me for that, and I says, how can you blame me for getting glandular fever? So it's a nightmare. There were a bit of a funny story though, when he decided that he wanted to resign, and he wrote a letter of resignation. He said, "I've had enough. I'm gonna send this letter of resignation." I'm saying, "Are you sure you want to do this? You know, you haven't given it very long." So he wrote a letter out himself, and then he faxed it to me in my office in Wakefield to check it, to see what I thought about it. But I checked it through, and I thought, I don't like this really. I didn't like his points he was making. And so I rung him and said, "Look, I don't really think you should be doing this, you know. It's not right, you know, it's blah, blah, blah." So I said, "I just, you know, hold your fire for a while. Just see how it goes." He says, well, fax it back to me anyway then. So I faxed it back, because they were all faxes these days, not emails. So I faxed it back to him. And he says, do you know this story, Jim?
No, I don't think
you know this story. Oh,
I don't think
fax it back to him at Stoke. And about 10 minutes later, he rings me up, panicking. Where's this fax? I said, I sent it 10 minutes ago. It's saying on my machine that it's gone. Well, I can't find it anywhere. He's not come to my office. Anyway, I can hear him panicking, and he's asking somebody in the office, how many faxes is there on this? How many fax machines are there on this floor? And somebody said, I don't know, 3 or 4 or something. He says, I'll ring you back, Andy. So I was running off. I find this out later. He's going to every fax machine in Stoke's ground, trying to find it to see if it's gone to one of other fax machines. Can't find it anywhere. He's got this vision of this resignation letter, which he don't want to send anymore, being picked up by Peter Coates as chairman or something like that. Anyway, so he rings me back about another 10, 15 minutes later, honestly going by me. Andy, where is it? Where is this? Where is this letter? I just refaxed it to where I faxed your last one to. And then we realised the last fax I sent to him was a match report when he were at Lilleshall, which he would go at Lilleshall for a special day or something like that, some day out at Lilleshall. So I'd faxed it to Lilleshall by mistake. So he rings up to my God, what's going on? And luckily, one of the secretaries who he knows, and she says to him, I think I might have got something that belongs to you here, Chris. When he rings up, he says, will you do us a favour and shred it? She says, yeah. So
that is brilliant.
So did that. I mean, about a few days later, not a week later, about a few days later, me and him are off to see a game together. Because we're not resigned. He's not resigned at this time. So we're in car and we're off to see this. I think where were we going to go to? I think something like Shrewsbury. I can't remember where it was. We're in car together, and phone goes on in his car. He were driving, and it's somebody from Stoke News, local newspaper. We looked at each other, we're thinking, and he says, I've just come into possession of a fax from you that I'd like to ask you about. Well, we both looked at each other. Oh my God! He says, well, what is it? He says, yes, this fax says that you put all the first team up for sale and you're open to offers to all. And we thought, oh, thank God for that. It's that one. Because we weren't bothered about that. That we're for general. Anyway, so it was just such a relief, but we thought we'd been caught out again. So
nice. So Chris eventually leaves Stoke.
So I left Stoke with Chris because Chris had taken me down, so I had no affiliation with Stoke or anything. So I left, and I was very short time, and again this was down to Chris. I think he said, I've been in touch, or somebody from Chelsea had been in touch. Gwyn Williams. A lot of people don't realise, but Gwyn Williams was Vialli's right-hand man. He was classed as the assistant manager, but it was like assistant manager stroke chief scout. And he says, I've been talking to Gwyn Williams, and they're after a scout to cover north of England at Chelsea. He says, I wondered if you'd be interested, because he said, I'm not looking to get into anything anymore. He said, I'm looking to do a bit. Well, they were looking to do after dinner speaking at the time. They weren't looking to get into TV. They were looking to do after dinner speaking. And I said, yeah, I'm interested. So I went down and had a chat, and they offered me the job straight away, and I became their senior scout for the north of England. Turned out just for one season, but I loved it. It was a different world to me, because obviously I'd been working I knew Sheffield United, I knew Bradford City. So we're all like low. This was the first time I'd worked Premiership.
Sorry, we're having a few connection problems.
You need some better bloody equipment.
It's you. It's your Wi-Fi, this, I'm telling you. You've joined Chelsea as the senior Northern Scout. What an unbelievable opportunity, by the way. As you said, it were only a season as it turned out, but what an unbelievable experience to be working in the Premier League. But not just that. I know from you being my dad and then knowing what you were into. And you end up working for one of your idols, somebody that you looked up to as a kid, watching play. Gianluca Vialli is the manager of Chelsea. What were it like to work under Vialli?
Chelsea were a great club. Say it was the first time that I'd worked for a Premiership club, because I'd been with, obviously I knew Sheffield United, I'd got to know Bradford, I got to know Stoke, but Chelsea was the first Premiership club, and they hadn't come into the Abramovich's money, but they were starting to become really big, and they were a great Premiership club, and they were so good with the scouts, and I got invited down to look around the changing rooms and to meet all the players. And whenever if I wanted to go to an away game, if I ain't got a game to go to, they say, "Oh, just come." I remember going to Middlesbrough, and you saw I got looked after, and so they were really good. So I really enjoyed. I didn't do and it was very strange. Although I didn't do a lot of player reports, because I had to go from looking at players who could fit into our systems in the first division or the Championship as it is now, and those sort of divisions, the lower divisions, to I'd be watching a team and looking at the very best available to see who you could buy. So we're going to watch Leicester now. We're looking at Emil Eski to see if he could fit into the team. Whereas before I'd been looking at, I don't know, some obscure left back.
Yeah.
So it was different, but I did mostly for Chelsea. I did mostly team assessments, as you know. Being a scout, when you're working for the first team, it tends to be a joint thing. Sometimes you're looking at players who you're going to buy for the team, and sometimes you're doing team assessments, where you have to do strengths and weaknesses on the teams that you're going to play. You have to do what they do at set plays, what they do at corners, where you think they can be attacked. Little bits. Yeah. What's coming into it more and more now is that managers are wanting where are the weak areas of the team that you want, that we should be attacking. Yeah. So they were quite involved. It was also becoming more and more technical, the reports. When I first started at Bradford, they were like sheets like these that you would fill in, which were all, a lot of it were all pre-printed, so they'd ask you, strengths and weaknesses. You'd have to put teams down, little bits about each player and what they would do. There'd be diagrams of what you would do for different set plays and corners. And then he moved on, and I think you got involved a little bit later. It's with Scout 7 on the computers. So you started putting all the reports on computers, and then it would just go straight to the club. So it was all done on diagonals on the computer. So it became a little bit more involved. But it was when you looked at, I don't know how it was when you were scouting with Rotherham and what have you, Jim. But whenever I looked at, I'd go and watch we'd have meetings, and we'd say we're looking at, we need a tall centre midfield player. So we'd have a decision about which players that we'd want to look at, and if it was in the north of England, I'd go and watch it. If it was south, somebody else would go and watch. If they were good enough, then we'd get them watched 2 or 3 and 4 times, and we'd go from there. And obviously, the problem I've always said to you with Everton, which was a great club to work for, I know we haven't got to Everton yet, but great club to work for, was they wanted too many reports, because we didn't have a lot of money at that time. So they needed to make sure that they couldn't make any mistakes. We couldn't afford to be spending even 4 or 5 million at that time and on Jagielka or whoever that may be, or Yobo or whoever, it could Kale, because we just couldn't afford to waste that money. It's not like now where they spend it. A bit
like United now, though, isn't it? A bit like us now.
You cannot afford to lose a £5 million player and think, oh, it's not worked out, because it's pretty. It's it's no good.
Why did you leave Chelsea? Was that a favour to Paul Jewell?
Want a favour? Paul Jewell rang me up. They just quite funny this. It got to the end of the season, and I knew quite a few of the lads I knew Paul Jewell from the first time I was at Bradford, and he was now manager. And they were just about to get promoted. They hadn't got promoted, but he rang me up at the end of the season. Chelsea's season had finished, and the playoffs. Was it the playoffs? No, it wasn't the playoffs because they got up automatically. Did Bradford? But they had one more game, and they had to win at Wolves, I believe. And he rang me up and said, "I'd like you to come and join us next year." And I said, "I want you to be my chief scout, and I'm going to give you a 3-year contract, and I'm going to give you a car, and I'm going to give you an office and all." So I thought, I like the sound of that. So he said, "Why don't you come to our last game of the season? We're playing Wolves away. We're staying down at there's a fancy golf course down near Wolverhampton. I'm not a golfer, so I can't remember what they call it, but this lovely big hotel. He says, come down and stay with us. We'll have a chat." Met him at the hotel. Had a dinner with him. Had a meal. Had a long chat afterwards in the bar. More or less come to a decision that I would join them next year, no matter what, whether they went up or stayed down. Stayed there the night. Got on the coach with them to Wolves the day after, and obviously they're all driving in. There's all fans there and all television cameras, and I'm getting off large as life off Bradford City coach. And I'm thinking, hold on a minute, I'm still employed by Chelsea here. I'm thinking, what's going on? So I suddenly just took a back seat and put my hat down and bloody. So I was thinking, oh, this is a bit of all right, getting off. We're all bloody players, and so. Just thought, Vialli's going to be chuffed with this. Old Andy there, I'm bloody Bradford City coach.
That's ridiculous. That is
so I didn't
ridiculous.
have a contract or anything with Chelsea. So we went to watch the game, and I finished up. We had a great time because I knew loads of players. Darren Moore were there, Robbie Blake were there, all players who I'd helped sign and all been involved with. So went to the game, won. Great time, and finished up going back with the Bradford City lads and had a big knees up in Bradford afterwards. I still wasn't working for them, so I'd started early. So yes, so that's why I left Chelsea because I was a mercenary and got invited by my mates to go back to Bradford, and so I got a 3-year contract at Bradford on very nice terms and started off there the following year, and that was their first season in the first division in the Premiership, and we stayed up. And we had a great time.
It was the David Weatherall last minute diving header, weren't it, against Liverpool that kept it up,
was.
I remember.
Right. Yep.
Apologies, we've had some technical issues, but we're now back. So
listen, I'm used to working with professionals here, Jim, and I'm not happy about this.
I do apologise that your Wi-Fi is not working for the stream.
I spent an hour in makeup before I came on here. So
sack the makeup lady. Right. So
it's been stop and start. No, all the way through. It's been a nightmare. I bet Darren Smith don't get this treatment.
No, he don't. He don't give me this stick either, to be honest. So you'd think working with my father would be the easiest one of the lot, but hey ho. You have just explained that Paul Jewell had rung you and enticed you back to Bradford with a deal you couldn't refuse, really. Appreciate it's not the glamorous position of Northern Scout for Chelsea, but Chief Scout for a Premier League side on a personal deal that really suited you. You couldn't say no to it. But if you watched our very first interview with my dad, you'll understand how it all soured at Bradford, unfortunately, and things like that, because first season were brilliant, and then it just sort of went a little bit downhill from there in terms of, well, ultimately the chairman. But that's another tale. I'm more interested in how you then got involved with Everton from there. Right. Well, Paul Jewell, he was half resigned, half got sacked. After staying up, Bradford City, who's never been in Premiership before, and Richmond gave Paul Jewell some stick about finishing 19th, and he thought that's completely out of order. And basically, Paul said, "Well, if you're not happy about it, bloody, I'll go." And he said, "Well, fair enough then." So that finished on a sour note.
He brought in Jim Jeffries. Oh, no, I brought in Chris Hutchins first, I think. Chris Hutchins was the assistant manager, and he did. Who's a mate of mine, is Chris Hutchins. He's a really nice fella.
Yeah, he is.
But what happened was Jeffrey Richmond, because he was a very new manager, very little experience, and I don't think I'm doing him a disservice, but I think he thought he were quite lucky to have got a Premiership manager's job. So the chairman was able to ride roughshod a little bit over him and basically took over running the club. So there were a lot of difficulties with Chris Hutchins, and he brought in Jim Jeffries, who were another really lovely bloke. He came from Hearts, yeah, but things just weren't right. Jeffrey Richmond was sort of like, well, very difficult to work with, according to a lot of the managers. So anyway, finished on a little bit of a sour note. I didn't renew my contract. I think the chairman was trying to get me off the wage bill anyway, because money was just so tight, and they were running out of money with Bradford. So I finished up. I did a little bit of work after that, because Paul had gone to Wigan. He'd gone to Wednesday first, I think, and then he went to Wigan. And he went on a really good run at Wigan. And I did a bit of work for him at Wigan, but just on a freelance basis. And again, Chris Kamara, obviously still my mate, and was my mate, and we used to go out, and who had contacts and was working in television this time, but still in football, said, how would you fancy working for Everton? David Moyes has been asking me if I know anybody who could do a Northern Scouts job. And he says, I know. Chris said, obviously, I know Andy Smith, who worked for me at such and such a place, who's been at Bradford. So I finished up going down and had a chat with, first of all, with David Moyes' chief scout, who was a lovely fella called Robbie Cook, who's just passed away now, but he were an ex-footballer, and he were a really nice fella. And got on really well. Asked me if I'd start straight away, and because David Moyes had only just started at Everton. I think this was like about a little bit into his first season. So I was there really from the start of Moyes' reign at Everton. And I was there right to the end of his reign when he went to Man United. I stayed on with Everton. In fact, I was the only scout who was kept on from Moyes' reign when Martinez came from Wigan. Because he brought, as is usually the case, when managers come into a new club, they usually bring their own scouts and their own coaches as much as they can, because it's them who they trust. But I was lucky enough to be kept on, worked with Martinez, who again got on really well with, and worked with Martinez so I worked with Moyes for about 12 or 14 years, and then Martinez for another couple, and then I just decided things were happening at home and things were changing, and I thought, I've done this for 25 years now. I think I've probably had enough. So even though it were a great job, and I loved every minute of it, and met some great people, and it sounds as though it's a perfect job, because obviously you get paid to go to football matches, you get looked after, but it is very tiring. You can't go on holidays when you want, and you've got to go 2 or 3 games, and then there's reports to do. So I'm not complaining about that. I'm just saying it's not all roses. No. But it's so I decided to give it a break, and was hoping that I could probably just keep my hand in a little bit afterwards. But it don't work like that, because I started taking holidays, and I'd be away on holiday when they asked me to go to a game, and so it really just eased off after that.
As we've sort of said before, I think you sometimes need a little bit of luck, or to know somebody to get in a door into the game. That's in usual circumstances. That's not actually what happened for me, but in usual circumstances, that's how you get involved. Which is obviously the case with you knowing Chris.
I'd have never got in anywhere without Chris Kamara getting me in to start off with. But then you sort of like make your own sort of contacts, and it goes from there.
I was going to say that the longevity is the key, and it's harder to stay somewhere, because if you were no good, whether Chris has recommended you or Alex Ferguson's recommended you, you're not staying there, are you? So
absolutely not. Absolutely not.
What you did. So.
There's so many people want scouting jobs. I mean, I used to bump into some great ex-players who were desperate to be getting to scouting jobs, and they're saying, they'd still like to me, Andy, how do you get this job? Can you put my name forward? And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, you're a top player,
How do you not know how to get in?
Yeah.
So would you say, because it's strange, Dad, because I obviously chose to come out when we had the girls, and So I couldn't really commit the family time with having a young family to scouting, but I don't miss it at all, if I'm honest. Particularly, obviously, because we go to United now. But even without the season ticket, I don't miss scouting. Well, I really enjoyed it while I was doing it. I did it for 4 or 5 years, but I don't miss it at all. What are you saying?
I am the same, and I thought I would do because it was a big part of my life for like 25 years. I mean, I've always been, as you know, I've always been a Blade right from the very start, and I've gone to United in like chunks. Like when I was younger, I used to go. Then I had a break when I was playing football. I had another chunk where once I'd finished football, and I'd sort of like things had eased down with. I got married and everything, started going again to football. Then I had missed another chunk when I'd been scouting, and then but this chunk. This last, well, they've all been great in different ways. The first bit were great because it was just rough and ready. The middle one were good because I was with Wakefield Blades and we used to go home and away, and it were, we used to meet different people and all that sort of stuff. But now it's just brilliant to go with you and our Dave and Eki out south. It's top class. I love it, to be honest. It's been really good.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us for that today. I know it's something that people have been asking for a while. And obviously, it's natural to us, so I didn't really understand the clamour for it, if I'm honest, to a degree. Well, but when you sit down and you think about it, people don't get to do what you've done, and it's I know you acknowledge that it's a privileged position and things like that, but it's great, really.
The only thing about I'm really privileged. So much stuff I've done. I mean, we haven't touched on quite a bit of it, but I just think. One of the reasons why I know you keep asking me to come on and asking me about scouting, but I think to myself, it's the scouting bit into about United. It's so I'm not sure how many people would want to see about United. They might do, they might not do, but that's the only reason why I said I'm not sure whether people would want to see it or not.
No, but my thoughts on that are that it gives you a little bit of legitimacy from people that don't know you at all. So,
don't take no notice of me anyway. No,
I'm just saying. I genuinely think that's to understand and get to know someone, you'll have more of an interest in what they've got to say. So by you talking a bit about your background in the game, I think it's a really interesting sort of way to introduce you, and then. Obviously, we just want to be focusing on Blades going forward. So if you were to be involved in future videos to talk about the Blades, and I think we've got one more lined up, and I'll try and persuade you from that point to continue to be involved. But, I think you'd be a fantastic addition to the channel. You know that anyway. I don't have to tell you on air because I always tell you off air anyway.
Well, thank you for that, Jim, and I appreciate it. But I still, as I say, and I think you do a great job. So, obviously I'll support you as much as I can anyway. But I'm not coming on. But I'm not coming on as a regular.
I'm working on it. I'll keep working on it. Dad, thanks so much.
All right.
Right, brilliant. Thank you, and I will speak to you soon.
See you later, Jim.
Cheers, Dad, to that. Back on again, Andy the Blade, by popular demand. Hope you enjoyed that. It was a bit of something different for us. Again, really interesting. So, if you do like what we're doing on the channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It'd be very much appreciated if you could. We're on that route to 5K before Christmas Day. But yeah, thanks again to me dad for coming on and giving us all an idea of what his scouting background were like. So we'll leave it there for now. But come on, you red and white wizards. Up the blades. Ramble on.